Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, July 7th, and this is a work session of the Board of Supervisors regarding the American Rescue Plan Act funds. On our agenda, we have updates from our previous meeting and kind of next steps and next meeting date. I can just give a quick little update. I am still garnering information from mayors. I'm hoping to meet with Colo and, not Colo, excuse me, McCallsburg and Roland yet this week. And then I have some information, but I do want to talk with Gilbert a little bit further as well. Then I should have about everybody at least reached out to.
Go ahead, I'm just wandering this
Oh.
way because I
Yep.
assumed you would need me to wander this way.
Yeah, I also want to say is that we had our, Lisa and I had our ISAC work group meeting last week. We'll have another meeting tomorrow at 11. Kind of upped the meeting dates. We'll see how long that lasts for us. But they were continuing to get more guidance as to what some of those dollars could be used for. There was some talk of state and city talk regarding some greater coordination for some potential pooling that cities could apply, or cities will have to apply, especially the non-entitled cities. They'll have a special portal that they'll be going through the state to receive their particular dollars and stuff. The state has interest in water and sewer, and the state is looking into invest some additional funds for this. They're also looking at funds that putting in some of their funds into the revolving loan fund to help with this. They're looking at investing in county parks. There's been talk of some additional funding to mental health, although we're not sure if that's to schools or what it is. A question I brought up, if it was dollars for mental health to counties.
To regions.
Or
yeah.
to regions, right. You know, does that impact the fund balance that the legislature put them under for spending down? And I'll have specific parameters. So those are, hopefully we'll have some more information on that tomorrow. There also may have some public health, some additional dollars for COVID-19 response for public health. They did say, I think we already talked about this before, that money can be put into interest-bearing accounts, and then that the interest can be used on anything. So it doesn't have to be necessarily meet the criteria.
Correct.
For these dollars. It can be used on anything. So that's just a little reminder there. The Treasury, was it something, Lisa, they said, was it on page 12 of the Treasury reporting guidance to review, because they had updated some reporting guidelines, I believe. I have that note. It's a Treasury page 12 reporting guidance review, because they've updated Treasury guidelines. Something that we'll just take another look at.
Right.
The initial comments on the interim rules has ended. There may be some additional amendments before it's final, but hopefully we'll have that. They're waiting for clarification for auditors on voting machines. So it's another area.
It's been a big conversation apparently.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
apparently
we weren't aware necessarily of that. And another thing they talked briefly about was the annual conference that will be coming up, and some of the topic areas of such as COVID mitigation at courthouses, broadband, proposed projects, housing and aging, issues with homelessness and how to fund that, single audit, reporting documentation, which is some of the areas that we covered. Anything that I missed on that particular meeting?
They're also, I'm hoping by tomorrow they will have gotten a preliminary estimate or question out to contact an independent firm to help counties determine their revenue loss. The larger counties have the personnel able to do that. The smaller counties, not so much. And so there's a lot of questions about the revenue loss, determining revenue loss for counties and who best to address that. So they were thinking, there was a couple of outside firms that they were talking about contacting to see if we could contract with them to help. So we're consistent across the board.
And there was a question of whether revenue loss had to be reflected on that first report, if it could be
Correct.
on a future report.
Correct.
And that's what they were getting clarification on as
Correct.
well.
Right. The one thing about the cities and the portal, the state will open for the cities, or I don't know if it has been open. Cities only have 30 days to draw down their first half. And Lisa and I had that conversation. It's a little scary because the cities are kind of like, what are you talking about?
They did talk about it last week, the Economic Development Group.
Good.
Yes, and I think Sonia from Gilbert brought that up, and she sent everybody a link, and I
Good.
think they're.
And Mark Jackson also brought up too, the concern, he thought that that was it. If they miss it out on it all. Not just
That's not the
first half,
impression I got.
But that was some of what the other one said, is they weren't 100% sure on that. So I think they were trying to get that information as
Right.
well.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Let's just say
Whose
that
rule is that? Like, where's that coming from? That you get it in 30 days or you're,
I don't have a clue.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was.
Yeah, I found it interesting that the League of Cities is so far is not on as much on top of it as ISAC has been.
And that was kind of a question. I was trying to figure out if they had some sort of like work group, and of course I should probably ask ISAC or whatever, someone from the city, or not ISAC, but ask someone from the League of Cities. But I know ISAC was not aware of it, and I said if they are, they've got a different process for some of those cities to go through. Because I just said I made note of a number meeting with the mayors and stuff that some of them didn't have information, and I was providing some
Right.
information to them. So that would be my update.
Okay. Latifa, did you have anything you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I think I spent most of the week.
Okay, well, I was tasked with talking with the chamber about several issues, and when we did have an initial discussion with Brenda Dreyer, who's here, and Nick Sorensen, who's no longer here with us, and Dan Cohane, one of the things that came up was the workforce initiative that the chamber has kind of picked up from United Way. And I'm gonna mention one thing, and then I'm gonna let Brenda talk about that, or you ask her questions. Everybody's gotten a copy. I did find in the latest FAQs that were sent out a question about could funds be, excuse me, let me find it again. Can a nonprofit or private organization receive funds? If so, how? It said, yes, local governments can transfer funds to nonprofits defined as organizations that are exempt from federal income tax and described as 501c3s. A nonprofit receiving a transfer will be considered a subrecipient, will be expected to comply with all subrecipient reporting requirements. Doesn't say you can't give it to a private organization, but I thought, well, they're talking about clearly you can give it to nonprofit. So I asked, does the chamber, does they have a 501c3? And they have a foundation, which is a 501c3, and that's the organization that's named here. So that's just, that just makes it clean. We don't have to say, we don't have to ask another question. That will do it then, I think. And Brenda, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that or any.
So, do you want me to come up with some?
Yeah.
Yes, would you please?
It picks up on the mic since we
Yeah,
record these
that's what I
meetings.
wondered
Yeah,
about.
thank you.
And so Leanne, have they seen some of your comments back yet? So Leanne got the document, and her and I corresponded last night. I appreciate some of her potential suggestions to the document. Specifically, catching a few of my things were at one point, and I thought director, little things like that. But most important, I think also, while it's good to be consistent back to kind of some of the things that are important coming out of the pandemic and in the recovery process for retraining our workforce. I also think it's important for us to tie back to a greater plan and consistently with what the county is doing. So on the draft she gave me, it does reference back to some of the C2C things, which I think is a great addition, specifically as it relates to the economics of our area. So thanks for your thoughtful work on that. So do you want me to just kind of give it kind of a high glance, what I think, how this would come together? You've heard through our quarterly reports about our initiatives to retrain our workforce and I want to keep coming back to the fact that where there is a lot of thought put into the jobs that we've suggested, because the last thing we want to do is to train folks and then not have any opportunities. So as DMAC and I have talked about this, and even as they set their curriculum for the Workforce Training Academy down in Ankeny, it's really about job number and what are there for opportunities for jobs, and are they jobs where there can be some growth within the position. So if you'd say, how were some of those things selected? I can kind of come back to some conversations with our employers. So the proposal and the initiative really details that the funds could come into the Chamber Foundation. That's one of the reasons we have a foundation, is so that we can be a recipient of grant activities and then be able to fund some of the initiatives that we do from donations into that fund. The executive summary, and actually what I did was I followed, we had just applied for some farmers market enhancement funding. I followed that federal grant kind of guideline, again, thinking in terms of what would be the things that your funder may ultimately ask that kind of have foundational things. So there's an executive summary, and again, this is really where Leanne is included in that summary, ties to some of the economic prosperity goals 5, 6, and 7 in the C2C plan. So that just provides an overview. We're basically saying kind of what we've learned. We know the success we've had in the past, and each time we've offered it, we've gleaned on successes. We know that there are sometimes that people are working, so being able to leave their job to attend the training has been a barrier. It's really about designing a program whereby we can get even more people into the program and be able to support them as they're going through it. So the alignment in the intent is really addressing maybe the issue at hand. I think you heard in my last report, we're consistently the lowest unemployment rate in the country. That's not the case anymore. And while we're still low, we have this service sector that just isn't getting back to work. But on the flip side, we've never had more jobs working names posted. So we have a real divide there of folks that continue to be unemployed and more jobs than we know what to do with in healthcare, manufacturing, and construction. So this is really talks about that. We know, because we talk to our human service providers, we know that their needs are more than they've ever been. So the groups that we've identified in the proposal always have lower labor participation rates than others. And so it's really about how do we build a program that does even one step further than just sending a flyer to the Human Service Agency. They're busy doing even more to try to connect those clients to the training that we're offering. So you can see kind of the overall objectives of the class in terms of hopefully targeting 59 classes over a 3.5-year period, engaging our human service providers, recruiting 407 program participants with a goal of at least 90% of them graduating, which I'd love to say 100%. Life gets in the way. That's an aggressive goal at 90%. And even more importantly is that 80% will actually find work. And those are aggressive goals. And again, I think hopefully we've got a program and a partnership designed to be able to reach those objectives. So, and you talk about not just are the folks the beneficiaries of the program, our families will benefit in the following ways. Our businesses and industries will benefit, as well as our communities. So again, in just really the last 9-10 months of being able to offer these trainings, we've seen these ripple effects and the difference being trained in a job where you get 40 hours a week and benefits and healthcare, the ripple effect that it can have on not just the participants. So we've got a proposed course schedule that I worked with DMAC on. So this we're going to be offering some classes in the fall. We want to keep moving ahead. We have a bit of a grant that we had gotten from the state. We spent our local funds, and then we can spend the like amount of that by the end of the year. Chances are we'll expend that with the classes we offer in September and October. So as we're getting, the staff we need to support the initiative, the communications in place, the recruiting, we'll still be able to offer some training with the dollars we have available, which is about $4,000 to provide wraparound services for a welding class and a nursing class. So we're recruiting for kind of the 3 major classes now, again, building a list of participants with the intent of being able to launch those 2 classes after Labor Day. So you can see kind of how we'd plan this out. Fall is just a much more of a, people are more in tune to the training in the fall. So you're like, well, how come this isn't evenly balanced? It's really about where DMAC has found success in offering the classes before. So you can see that's new in nurse aides. The advanced class doesn't cost anything to take. So the goal is to really encourage our people that have went through the basic CNA to then take the advanced class. And that's going to give them a higher wage at almost any institution. And so that's where you see it included. And I can almost see, 6-8 weeks, and then the next 6-8 weeks, they utilize the time on the advanced program. But patient intake and billing would be a new class that we offer. And you can see, we aren't offering it as much as we offer CNA because we have jobs, we don't nearly have the jobs in that particular area that we do in CNA. And so the last thing we want to do is to say, Brenda wants to take patient intake, but we flooded the market with people that don't have jobs on the backside of the training. So we're trying to really do that once a year and fill a class with 10 once a year. Same way with phlebotomy. The labs at our hospitals, those are tough positions to fill, but again, not like CNA. The welding class actually spills a little over 8 weeks, and so we can't offer that. This is more or less just, it's a longer class. 6 is really the limit at the welding lab. Chances are we could employ more welding there, but this is really just about, and considering we've attracted new and we've got an expansion of Elmaco that could use welders, we have a lot of need for welders. The manufacturing production tech is really a key class, and we can even go beyond 10 just because of the equipment we have available to support that class. And the participants over 3.5 years wouldn't even make a dent in the openings we have today. So, I hope I can come back to you at some point in time and say we exceeded expectations as it related to our manufacturing class. But I think we got some work to do on trying to convince people that manufacturing is an option for them. And so we got kind of some plans on how we would do that. There is a maintenance technician class that we work with our existing employers with to upskill their people. And we've trialed that with a few new people in that class on top of existing. And so I think we're going to be able to do that. This is a higher level skill, but I still feel like for somebody with some electrical ability, this would be a very worthwhile class. This is something Supervisor Merck and I talked about. These are some hard to fill positions. It doesn't matter if you're Story County or if you're Iowa State University. There are sometimes these sort of people that can fix things are hard to come by. So we're going to filter in some people there on top of the classes that we do with our existing industries. And then construction, we want to be able to design a class that is more than just preparing them to be a laborer. And so this, as much as I'd love to be able to offer that in November, we need to do some work with our existing industries to put together a class so that it is doing more than just creating an opportunity for somebody to be a laborer. The manufacturing class, we had worked with our existing manufacturers to put that class together before all of this even started. And so that's why we were able to move that one pretty quickly. And people coming out of that class have a high degree of success in our local industries because they're the folks that told us what needed to be in the class. So you can see how the participants break out over time. Again, this is just a plan, and it'd be great to be overwhelmed by numbers of people that want to participate. Again, this is only for Story County folks. I think that goes without saying. And the training for the most part will be held at Hunziker and with Nevada, the lab there. What we also know is that this needs some staff time to it. And so we're proposing that we would hire somebody, and it probably wouldn't be all of their job, but we would use part of the funds that have been identified here to offset the cost of bringing in somebody new to really be the point person, the person that goes out and presents to our human service provider, the person that tracks the stipends, that tracks graduation rates, that is the point person with DMAC, is the person that is really managing the performance areas that we can come back and report to you on, and that ultimately you can go back to the federal government and say, here's a scorecard and here's the things we've been tracking. And so we know, I have the best intentions. I think you all know I love this on so many fronts. It's just, it needs more time than trying to do this part-time. So we'll utilize our accounting staff just to ensure that the dollars between the foundation and our offices, or even the bills that need to be paid, and tracking the dollars that end up for childcare and transportation and stipends. So there'll be some of that'll be tracked in our offices as well. We'll cover the computer, we'll cover the travel as part of what we request is that lump sum. We aren't going to, we want to limit the amount of transactions. So we'll do a lump sum is what we're proposing, and then detail back how those dollars were spent, as well as ultimately then once a year actually providing the detail of who got the stipends, who got the childcare, who got the transportation, which is, the good thing is that we've had to report on that before for Future Ready. So we have to provide a document there that shows all of those things. So we have that reporting structure somewhat in place. Again, it's gonna be a little different with the numbers of participants that we're talking about. Again, driving the need that we want somebody available. So here's the things that we'll be looking at: the number of classes offered, the number of graduates, the scholarships awarded. I want to talk a little bit about scholarships. So the DMAC utilizes a program called Workforce Training Academy, and that allows them to take some federal dollars to pay for tuition for almost all participants. Now, there are income requirements that they need to abide by, but they're more generous than any other programs we usually work with. It's like 250% of poverty. So it's a pretty generous income number. They also don't normally support people without a high school diploma. We know a lot of times where people, in a lot of instances, but to make that across the board saying they can't participate. So the goal of the scholarships would be is that if there isn't other funding available to support participation in that class through the Federal Workforce Training Academy dollars, that we'll be able to provide scholarships to offset the direct cost of DMAC on that. So that's why there's scholarships there, and you're thinking 407 participants. We're hoping it's not very many that we need to do that. But I think we need to have the funds available because we don't want to turn down somebody because for whatever reason, they didn't graduate for high school or they happen to fall right over the line. And there are other reasons that they might be denied as well that we want to make sure we're taking away all barriers. So you can see some support for daycare. We'll report how much is being used there, the number of participants, which is different than the number of graduates. A real important number to us is are they accepting employment? How much transportation support have we provided? And the number of stipends have awarded. So when I talk to DMAC about stipends, this is new. This is, again, getting somebody that says, I can't give up the 10 or 15 hours at work to participate. So it's not going to close that gap completely, but we're hoping the addition of some stipends will keep them involved, or so giving them an incentive halfway through, an incentive to complete. And then as we talked about it, was now taking a job. And so after they've been at work for 30 days, then giving them the last amount of stipends. So again, that's just a proposal that we would throw out there. Again, as I was preparing this, I did seek the guidance of the other partners just to say, how would that look and how do we use that tool to support people participating, ultimately completing, and then taking work. And again, I'm envisioning that we would actually bring the position in as probably a workforce development coordinator. Thanks for catching my little changes on that, but I think it'll be a workforce development coordinator, different than workforce solutions. It really is. This is a development position. Most of their time is going to be spent supporting development. It talks about how they'll be held in the foundation. We'll generate a financial report every month based on the dollars we have. And then, like I said, we'll provide a really detailed report to you, and I've highlighted those dates, and at least if those are dates that there's other dates that make more sense for reporting, please let me know. I was thinking 15 days after the close of your fiscal. Do we have to do some other stuff then too, Leanne? I think other reports we do are due to you then. But again, these are just our proposal, and I am trying to think through, and I also would say, I think we always need to be looking with an eye on this program being successful and how do we continue the momentum moving forward. And so I think it's great we have potential funding now, but I would hope that if we can put almost 400 people into the workplace, that some of our employers that have needed that workforce most will be able to come forward to support these workforce efforts moving forward. So yeah, and I think also every day we produce more people that'll be ambassadors for the program. It's okay. I got through the math. It's okay. They really do support your daycare. I think there's so many things where you see it on paper. If you didn't have a great experience in school, automatically thinking, or you think, oh my gosh, I can't go work in manufacturing on 106-degree day. It's going to be 150. Well, no, every one of our manufacturers is air conditioned or in climate control. But again, if you're not familiar with it, it's hard to say. You can self-talk your way out of participating. So again, with some effort and trying to continue to push out testimonials of people that were at the Bridge Home who then got a job and were able to rent an apartment or be able to not work 3 jobs and work 1 job. And because of the employer you're at, your kids will get their education paid for. I think the more opportunity, a little bit more resources on our end to be able to tell those stories, I think would be helpful, and to go out and help the human service providers make that connection. So we will have an eye on that. If it's successful, none of us are going to want this to go by the wayside. And so you can see how I got the expenses a little bit laid out. You might know I color coded. Linda, I appreciate you caught that because I was struggling in terms of trying to match classes with how the county's budget lined up. But you can see the first column we would fund with the dollars we have, and then how it would break over the remaining time in terms of the aspects of the proposal. And yeah.
It worked nicely in fiscal years. And I suggested that Brenda do this through the whole 3 years, because this is a program that needs to build. And we have 3 years of funding, so why not utilize it for something that's this important a program? And we can, learn and adjust as we go along. I really like the goal of having it be employer supported, and I think by getting some people, helping employers with their workforce needs, and they see the value, I think that would be a good thing. And I would really appreciate if we do this, that we talk about that we have a 3-year funding opportunity here, but we really need to have private support of it to continue it on.
And I think one things we've learned from fall to spring is the importance of engaging the employers throughout the process. So some of our best success this spring has been in actually setting up meet and greets with the employers that are hiring people in those categories. So instead of saying, okay, there's your certificate, go and apply. Again, they maybe weren't employed or employed in a different fashion. So then we brought in, I hate to use the term speed dating, but we would set the employers, they stayed where they were. We had DMAC and their navigator ensured that they all had resumes and kind of target questions to ask. And then every 8 minutes, we just rotated them. And so they had a chance to meet with employers, with jobs. And so I think if you had Story County Medical, Green Hills, of course, Mary Greeley, McFarland, those folks that are hiring CNAs would say, oh my gosh, it was just really valuable. I mean, the pressure of an interview wasn't there. It was more about, tell me about yourself. We want to hear about your organization. So then we did the same thing with the welding class this time around. So we let the welders weld, and we let the employers walk around and visit with them. And I think all 4 pretty much left with multiple. Really, we knew they were all going to get multiple offers after leaving. But again, it was in where that person was comfortable welding versus not sitting at a table. So I think we've learned some things, and I think we'll learn every time we go through this. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this wouldn't be possible without a DMAC and our human service providers, and even Jean and her team, because we all want this to be happened. And again, I know from DMAC's standpoint, they're thrilled that there's a plan to try to put people into more training here so that they can justify the navigator they've brought on staff. Once they're students and in the program, then they are really the conduit to making the request for stipends and getting the paperwork signed when they get a gift card to pay for childcare, to ensure that there's a paper trail. And so they're great partners, and I'd be remiss to say this is just a piece I hope to maybe move to an implementation stage, but it's really a lot of other partners that would be involved.
So DMAC will continue to have their dedicated person for this.
Well, especially
program
if we can ensure them students. Yeah, I mean, that's
Ensure the students don't do that.
How do you get word out to students?
Well, and that's where you might notice there's marketing. So where we have kind of struggled a bit is we have been limited in our efforts in terms of what we can really do for marketing. So we've tried to do it with digital marketing. I think we've got to think about where can we put those dollars to really support marketing. And again, that's where I think, our marketing staff can be helpful, but the person we bring on to lead this effort has really got to be the one that's getting the flyers to places where people might be. And again, it's explaining it further, because it sounds really gay. I mean, it sounds almost like a gimmick that you can get free training. And you're like, no, but here's how it works. So yeah,
And Brenda and I already kind of started this. We had a meeting the other day with Terry Jones, who's the supervisor of the Department of Correctional Services,
Yeah.
probation and parole office here. They serve, from Ames, they serve Story, Boone, and Greene counties. And she was particularly interested in Boone, and we said, well, this would just be a Story County program, but she was very interested for Story County people, but Boone as well. So I said I'd reach out to Steve Duffy. And he and I have had a discussion, and he said he would be very interested, because he called me and said, what are you guys doing with recovery plan funds? And I've had a few calls like that. So I said, hey, we have this. I haven't sent him this yet. I wanted to make sure that you were ready
Yeah, let's
send
get the cleanup done a
Get
little
cleaned up
bit.
version and get it back to me, and I'll send it to him, because they were he
Mhm.
said he would be very interested in them participating, so that would be another funding
And that would
source.
help us
And-
get closer to a person being dedicated full-time
Yeah,
to
right.
it, which would be great.
And you would have to keep, keep
Yeah, absolutely,
separated from Story County residents and Boone County residents.
which we have to do anyway,
We have to
because
do that anyway.
because Boone is one of our contract holders.
Yeah, so you'd have the connections, and I'm working on the connections to work this program in Boone as well.
Yeah. And it actually may help us ultimately offer a bit more training. So then Boone being involved, again, we're used to keeping our students separate. But I mean, then it opens up the CNA space in Boone, and it may also open up a welding lab there. And again, we want to support their transportation to the class. And so we'll keep track by county. So I appreciate your efforts with that, because I think it would ultimately make both programs stronger if we had that available. But certainly Dan's been involved in this and supportive, and we are dedicated to hiring somebody with a workforce person that would use this, and this would be kind of their first priority, and then we'd find other things that could be helpful in our workforce efforts.
So you might be able to write a complimentary
Absolutely,
proposal to go to Boone County. if they want it.
absolutely, I could.
That could be interesting.
And again, we kind of have a sense of, so the Boone ones that have been in the program this go around, we utilize some of our Boone supports to be able to get them to participate. So
When I send it on, I'll make sure you stick your contact information.
yeah, that would be awesome. So what do you have for questions for me?
Interesting with the program, I was just looking at the reporting and accountability, and I think one thing that, should we move forward, would be interesting to not only your participants or graduates, but what part of the county they're from.
Oh, perfect.
Just tracking, is it
So we could do almost a
is it
zip
Ames, or
code.
is it coming from,
Yep.
Colo or whatever?
So that could be added to the scorecard,
Yeah.
almost a zip code listing.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And you see kind of the agencies up here I've identified that we work with, and I've had a bit of a conversation with Voc Rehab, just what training might be a good match there, of course, workforce development. And what we're finding is even our kids that are getting ready to graduate or did graduate in 2020, tracking some of them that have lost their way a little bit in terms of just because of everything gone on. So, and I think too, when we report out, just like we've done, if you show me, you've seen the visual we've done before where it highlights kind of those targeted populations. I think we would also make sure that you're seeing that on a regular basis. So,
You might kind of want to, I don't think you've written it in here, when you talk about the high schools and the kids who graduated in 2020 and maybe things didn't work out so great for them, so let's kind of pick up the pieces here. And if you could put that in there, that's an additional thing in terms of why we're using
Okay.
rescue plan funds.
so
We're
cite
looking-
kind of the
we're
COVID
looking at-
impact.
Yeah,
And
potential workers who were impacted by the pandemic just never got into
Okay.
the workforce.
that we can 2021 grads, and we saw that firsthand. We actually had 2 welders that were just recent grads at Boone that went
Yeah,
through the
I
class.
can't imagine what it must have been like for kids after that.
So I'll add that to executive summary.
Is there an age frame that you're targeting in here, or is this just open?
So typically, like I said, the Workforce Training Academy is high school diploma, so that drives a lot. We had an older gentleman actually participate in welding, kind of second career sort of stuff. So no, we would not be at all.
You're not
discriminatory.
limiting age or whatever,
No.
so anyone could apply to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Sandra, do you think the Story County College Access Network folks there might be interested in this? And
Possibly Britta is.
Yeah, I'm
be part of that group now too? Okay.
So I think certainly, would you not agree, Sandra, from a communication stakeholder standpoint? be very consistent with that. So they are probably not aware of this. Again, this is a proposal. I've been very careful to not get too far over,
Overextended.
well, or just getting people excited that it might happen. And then,
For some reason it fell through.
yeah, or
Yeah.
we didn't have a way to take the funding, or you find out something on a call that says, well, it sounded great to support individuals, but we're not, going to be able to. So certainly when and if we get to a point that you guys are comfortable and then I think we actually start the communication. I had to meet with DMAC just because that getting their buy-in and being able to say, are you in? And they're excited, and I'm not, it would be a great problem to have to almost overwhelm the students.
There's probably a couple details we should talk about in terms of how to put a contract together.
Yeah.
To present to the full board so we can look at how it would work. And I guess I'm thinking, it sounds like you're looking at upfront money and then doing a accounting of it later.
I haven't really thought about that a whole lot.
Okay.
So I think let's figure out what you can and can't do. And again, I'm envisioning back to when you were talking about being able to reinvest the interest. We're going to be fine. I think we got to pencil out, when would we need cash, but maybe we don't draw cash without driving somebody too crazy, but maybe we figure out we're going to draw cash every 2 months, or we're going to draw it quarterly, or I'm just saying, I don't think, especially in light of what I've heard there, we're going to be better at that money together from an interest rate standpoint. And if we're servicing, let's say maybe we find out that trying to offer a class in the summer is a bust. Well, I'd rather have those funds sitting with you, and we only take what we need to take, so that we're just recruiting and marketing over the summer and not doing classes. So I think we can be flexible, and I don't feel like we have to draw aggressively.
Because the other thing is, if you don't have the money there, what you end up with is every time you tell somebody, I'm gonna get you childcare money, or I'm gonna get you this, you've gotta
Yeah.
apply to get reimbursed, and that would just drive some people
So I think
crazy.
we almost have to look at a two-month window of time of what we think we're gonna need to support transportation, daycare, stipend, and scholarships. And then we figure out, well, we'll do the quarterly, or twice a year, we'll draw our personnel-related expenses. I think we can come up with that. But again, I am not at all envisioning that we would draw full years of funding. That does not, especially in light of being able to use the interest.
And I guess my thought would be too, is if we look at doing a multi-year funding and you set up however you want to draw it the first year and that is just not working.
Yeah, we
you
can
redo it.
adjust. Yeah.
Redo it for the next year.
And for what you have for the current fiscal, you would need funding till November 1st, because you've got September and October coming out
Yeah.
of your state future ready funds.
Yeah.
So we don't have to have the contract done right away. What we could do is you send the proposal, and if we're ready to discuss it next Tuesday, we could put it on the agenda for next Tuesday, and then the contract could be worked out a little bit later. Maybe you could work with Lisa Markley and Sandra King.
And have they provided you any subrecipient agreements?
No, we're just kind of doing our own.
Okay, because that was to say, because if there was a template we had to follow or something because of that, we could.
We can ask that at our meeting tomorrow, Lisa.
Yeah, I wonder if they have something, or something you want in the file. I mean, I'm just thinking about when we write a grant, we have to have our
Right.
cover letter for the IRS and prove
A
that
lot
we're
of
understanding.
the information we've been getting is, use the current ones you have. Use the ones that you're already using.
But we would do, well,
But-
obviously, we do a separate one because it's a different organization. But
Right.
This would be separate.
Right.
But we have a Yeah, we've got a kind of contract template that we're using for this.
Okay,
And I think it can be modified for this purpose. The one-
Right, and one of the things that we're obviously going to add to a subrecipient contract right now is the following up on documentation, because if we're doing the funds up front,
Yes.
I think that's fine. I just want, some sort of mechanism to make sure we get the documentation we need.
yeah, and again, having done really COVID money through these future ready things, I generally know they like it down to the level of who got it. So I think we've got those processes in place, and again, even hopefully we could provide good detail on that. But yeah, so that works for us. And again, I just want an opportunity, like I said, thanks, Leanne, for taking a look at this and getting a little cleaned up. And so would this be all you need? Would this be enough to go on the agenda, or what are you envisioning you'd want?
I would think so.
Okay,
With Leanne's suggestions, I think that's a great suggestion to get all the C2C plan references in there and maybe adding the reference for the 20 and 21.
Yep. COVID
grads.
impact grads.
And, let's see, I don't know.
I'm gonna actually add scan to that human service provider list.
And is your AEDC grant just that one time?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually one of the future ready grants. And so,
One United Way had the year before.
yeah, the United Way had kind of the COVID dollars, and then Kathy pulled back in the dollars that weren't used and then had a funding round, and that's where we had to have the match the second time
Gotcha.
around, and no marketing. It limited kind of what we
Sure,
could do,
sure,
but
okay.
it's kept us afloat, and for that I'm grateful. And part of the things we had planned for some money for computers. Well, then what happened as things have opened up, they actually went back to in-face classes, so they didn't need the computers that we thought they would need, but we still got 4 of those at United Way, and DMAX got a couple, and we had the hot spots at the library. So we've kind of got stuff, but we didn't need as many dollars just because they were able to meet in person, and so it's worked out pretty well. But again, it'd be nice to have more people participating in
That's
the.
really Boone's a good partner.
Yeah, and I think also more staff to go out and answer the question, hold information meetings, where there's a trusted human service provider. I also thinking our faith-based community, getting them engaged. I haven't even touched on that group, but I feel like there's lots of opportunities to go recruit people where they're at.
Right.
And I think, we'd say we've relied on digital media because it's easy, and it's, I think there's more to be done.
You mentioned people with disabilities.
And yeah, and I got kind of the high school principals and guidance counselors down, I think, is
You're
potential.
mentioning people with disabilities.
Uh-huh.
Is there a potential then of like people need assistive devices of any kind?
Well, and I
Or
think
would
folk
you-
rehab would be, I think there's
Able up would be
programming
a
to be able
resource.
to support that. But I was wondering, especially moving into like the patient intake, things that maybe we haven't had available before. I'm wondering if that wouldn't be opportunities for that group. And we had a manufacturing meeting with folk rehab in the last month, and my eyes are even open, even though I have a child that's served with folk rehab. My eyes are open that sometimes it's, if you're deaf in one ear, you could be getting services. And I shouldn't limit my thinking to think that folks can't be working in our manufacturing settings with some accommodations and things. So
Well, I'm thinking of Able Up,
able up.
and for 2 reasons. They just did a presentation to us this morning. And they might be working with people who could use some job retraining, that there might be something they can do if they got different training. And also they do the loans for assistive devices, so that might be a way that, without, if somebody is able to get a loan.
Did Anna present
Yeah,
today?
she did.
Yes,
Yeah.
she
So
did.
Yeah.
I think that's a reason for me to have a cup of coffee with her.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they might be a partner.
Yeah, I think, again, people have financing opportunities, but yeah, it's just, I think our opportunities are so I mean, we need to go to where people are at and not assuming that everybody's gonna see our Facebook ad.
Right.
And that's what we've had to do, or we're counting on a caseworker to catch a flyer and have all the details to be able to walk with one of their clients. So that's where having a person that's more engaged in that area, I think will help us get the participants up where we need,
Yeah,
or,
I was just thinking there's lots of places that if you have somebody who's really got the time, they can go to, like Food First.
yeah, we'll have lunch
Food First in
occasionally.
Ames and Nevada, and just say, can I just hang out and see if there's somebody here who'd like to talk about training,
Yeah,
jobs? I'm glad that you're willing to, put somebody on, because,
yeah,
sometimes people say, oh, well, we don't know, this is grant funding or a few years, but if we don't do that, how do we get the work done?
no, and I think we feel pretty good about our ability, if there's success, to be able to go to the recipients and say, by virtue of COVID, there was funding available and the supervisors felt strongly enough to commit to it. I mean, I realized this is funding that could go to something else. So I am appreciative, but I think it can pay strides on return for an investment long-term if we're successful, and can set us up for an easy conversation for some of these places. And what I would say is, we haven't gotten all of the employers engaged, but the ones that we have been so grateful that we're trying to do something that's meeting the staffing challenges that they have. So I'm excited that if we could get something together that we'll be able, and again, we will, I know that's not why you do it, but I think it's important for people to understand is that you're making this a priority. And so that partnership will be very much about, why we're able to do it. So I think it's important for people to understand you guys are making this a priority too. So.
I really appreciate the work you've put into
You bet.
this proposal, and I know that you've been, this is what, third draft?
Yeah, no, but I
It's really-
think it gets better every time.
It does.
Just been like the training too. So anyway, so you'll see me probably back next week. We'll get this cleaned up and we'll get it submitted. Where do you want it to go? Do you want it to go right to Shelley? Do you want it to go to one of you?
Why don't you can send it to me and I'll get it.
Okay, and then we'll plan that we'll be here in case there's other questions from you or questions from the public.
By Thursday noon, do you think?
Yep, it will absolutely, you'll have it. Again, this is gonna be easy. Somebody that's really a good proofreader over there.
Leanne, did you have any other thoughts?
Tell them what you told me.
I shared it with them.
Okay,
I emailed it.
Okay.
I emailed it. I just worded it.
okay,
A quick math, I just used $600,000 by what, $1,400 investing in the future of current residents, and the benefits beyond that is mind blowing to me.
Did you sent that to us?
Not that common.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
so all I saw is, boy, I love this, Brenda.
That's why I was wondering.
I
if
said,
missed it.
boy, I love this. I wanted to reach right through the screen and say, I'm glad. I mean, because I do, I think it's pretty great stuff, and it doesn't take a whole lot of stories to say, man, this is the right thing to do.
And I know those young adults, not children, but those 2020 graduates, and they are a lost graduate class.
Mhm.
And I know several that have said, oh, if only I could just do this for like 10 years, just get my footing and just like regroup my life. And I know the schools would be a valuable partner, and I'm seeing if we could expand our welding lab, but we can't right now.
But we're grateful because it's a great welding
It's a
lab.
great welding lab.
So, and again, that's where it's great that we can provide transportation. It's a barrier, but whether we like to admit it or not, between Ames and Nevada, and just one more step people have to think about. So it's good to be able to check things off to say, no, that's not going to be a barrier. So good. Are you done with me? Good.
We're done for.
I think so. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. Good seeing ya. You bet.
Thank you.
You'll see me next week and you'll have a cleaned up copy by noon on Thursday.
Okay, super.
So do we have anything else for today? Next steps, our next meeting. I will comment that on the 3rd, which would be the next Tuesday in the afternoon, the Board of Health does have a meeting in the afternoon. And Lisa Monthly, did you have something else you wanted to say? Oh, just joined. the
No, I
session.
just came up here so I could hear better.
Gotcha. I was just saying that if, next Tuesday, the Board of Health has a meeting in here at 2 PM on Tuesday. So just looking at
Do we want to do early?
if we want to do earlier, we'd have to be done in time to, for the Board of Health to get the Zoom going up for that as well.
Right.
I think we'll have, unless you think you're gonna have something more, I don't have anything else for next.
Do you want to hold off till the 10th?
Well, we could look, the one thing I thought of is we could look at our internal asks.
See where we're at with that.
Yeah, we probably should circle back on those conservation facilities, whatever, if we need to. Do we want to be making decisions on those, or do we want to hold for a little while and see what other ones come from external?
Before you amend the budget, and well, today you approved the HVAC and I've moved that over. I think before we get too far down any of those roads, we should just verify that you know what we've moved. I mean, I can certainly do a spreadsheet of that for you.
I think a spreadsheet would be really
Yeah.
helpful, if you don't mind having one more spreadsheet.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah, that, then we can look at it every time and I'll be looking at the same thing and not having to remember, or me looking at my totally incomprehensible notes, if I can find them.
Yeah, and everything that has been moved to date was budgeted originally. So it's not as though it's new projects, okay? So everything was budgeted that's been moved, but you probably would like to know that.
How about the things that were proposed internally that we haven't necessarily?
Correct, there's
Yeah.
that.
If you can delineate, those, and I know you're gonna be asking some questions, follow up on some of the conservation issues, which we should have that information before we go further. Maybe just to look at what we've got so far, and maybe just have a little strategy session next week to say, okay, we've got a couple things in the works now, what else are we looking at, and what do we want to prioritize, and who's moving forward. I think we're on a nice roll. We've got obviously time, the things that we know we don't have a lot of time on, we know what the deadlines are, and it's prioritized, so. Unless, there's something internally we should move up, but we could talk about it next week.
So do you want to meet on Tuesday next week?
What about, would you feel more comfortable if we met at 12:30?
If our board meeting isn't, we don't know what's on the agenda. So it's
I
like,
don't, but we could try to meet at 12:30. If we got out early, we could meet at 12:30, and that would give you a little bit of time. If we slated an hour, that'd give you a little bit of time before your Board of Health meeting. Is that?
yeah, we could do that unless you wanted a different day, but I'm fine with giving that a try.
I could do Wednesday. Looking at another day, that's an option as well.
I could do Wednesday. Yeah, does
Wednesday at 2 better for everybody?
that work? No?
That's fine with me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because then it will be actually after if we have another,
If we have another,
if we
yeah.
have another meeting, we'd be,
What's the
the
date?
4th.
Wednesday,
The 4th.
August 4th?
Yep.
2?
yeah.
Did you have your meeting with ISAC in the morning?
No, well, we have
No,
it
we have
tomorrow
it
from
tomorrow.
11 to 12,
11
and
to
then
12.
whether we meet again is what I'm
Okay,
saying.
gotcha.
That time frame 11 to 12 seems to work better for,
People,
For
okay,
people.
then if we're Wednesday, August 4th, 2 to 3.
And my job is to get you a spreadsheet of internal projects that
right.
have been
Can you
either
put the external ones on as well, just so we have it all on one
the
spreadsheet?
external.
Yeah,
Housing.
like the housing one, the workforce, could those go on the same spreadsheet but a different section?
I need to see the workforce. I never saw it. I never got a copy of
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Forwarded to her.
it. Okay,
The
and I
draft.
forwarded the copy I sent.
Oh, you did, you did, please.
To everyone in here today, just a little bit ago. So you should-
so I have it, okay, never mind.
Yeah, so if you don't, let me know.
Sorry, I didn't get that to you.
I can send you the list of all the things we've been talking about.
Well, isn't it housing and economic development are the two outside of the internal project?
Right at this particular time.
Yeah, I would say housing and economic development are the only two that have an amount tied to them at this point, and then the internal projects, obviously.
Okay. I think we got a time set then. Unless there's anything else, we'll adjourn.
Good.
All right, thank you.